Hey Facebook peeps, this is Jen, and this is my very first Facebook Live. It's really awkward. I'm not used to talking to a camera. I'd much rather write, but I've been saying I was going to do one of these for a long time. Most of my friends know that I am in the process of losing weight, trying to get healthy again. So I keep saying when I lose another 15 or 20 pounds, then I'll do a video. But yeah, I just said hell with it. This is a topic that really needs to be discussed. It's something that I've actually been writing about for about 2 years. Anybody that's followed my blogs might remember one that I wrote about 2 years ago called Does Size Matter? And Other Relationship Deal Breakers. It's a pretty important topic. It's something I've dealt with in many relationships. Size, performance anxiety, premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, you name it. I've kind of been through it all with relationships and men. And the reason why it's so important is because those issues affect men and their ability to be intimate with anyone. If they're not rooted in their finances, in their sexual ability, in their size, their body, they're not rooted in the relationship, and neither is the woman. So if the guy's not rooted, there's no way she can get rooted, because she's seeking out that rootedness and that grounding in him. And if he doesn't have it, what does she have to root into? So I had a client about 2 months ago, and it's okay that I'm talking about this because he's not somebody that anyone will ever know who he is. He sought me out and was going to hire me as a coach, but it took like 2 sessions before I really could figure out what it was that he wanted from me. He is a guy that's under-endowed. He's been in a relationship for about a year with an amazing woman that he's in love with, and they have this deep connection. But a year into the relationship, she declares that she's not happy because she wants somebody more endowed. She wants him, but she also wants sex with somebody that's, bigger. And he didn't want to lose that relationship, so he agreed and claimed that he was perfectly happy with this lifestyle and wouldn't have been something that he would have chosen for himself otherwise, but he felt like, if he wants the relationship, he has to kind of go along with this. And so our first call, as soon as he told me, just a little bit of his story, I don't bite my tongue. I'm Italian and New Orleans girl, so I kind of can be a little abrasive sometimes with the way I put things. And I just said, well, let me guess. Before this relationship, you were a narcissistic asshole that was a womanizer. You had the big truck or the big car. The gym junkie. You were always working on your body. Always had, ripped muscles. Had to look your best. Cocky. Thought you were the shit. Couldn't really hold a relationship. You went from one woman to the next. And this is the first person that you've stayed with long enough to have a connection with, and you don't want to lose that, so you are kind of going along with whatever she wants to hang on to that. And he was silent for like a minute, and then finally he said, wow, you just hit the nail on the head. You described me exactly. He's like, how did you know? I said, because I've dated men like you like half a dozen times at least. So I've been there. I know. And I said I also know that it's not something that all men are consciously aware of, that how they're acting as a result of their inadequacies, where it's stemming from. And in his situation, I felt like I couldn't keep him as a client. For one, he wanted me to be his substitute cuckoldress, like hold the key to his chastity belt and boss him around and tell him what to do when his mistress wasn't in town. And that really wasn't my thing. I said no thank you. I don't think I'm the coach for you. I don't know if you really need a coach or if you need something else. But, you know, I helped him as best I could with that little revelation as to why he's doing what he's doing. And another reason I couldn't really work with him is because I felt really incredibly sad for him. Like, it's one thing when people choose an alternative lifestyle and choose to do freaky stuff, you know, to each their own. When they consciously choose it, when they're like, hey, this is, you know, kind of freaky and cool, I want to give it a try, I want to see what it's about. As opposed to, well, I kind of got to go along with this if I want this woman. And I felt really sad for him. I felt like, wow, this is really sad that this man thinks that this is all he's worth, is, you know, the size of his penis. That he thinks that he has to endure this type of relationship because he's never had this level of intimacy before. He's never had somebody stay with him that long, and he's desperate to hang on to it. So he's enduring so much humiliation and just the stuff that he described in this relationship was beyond me. Like, I couldn't support that. So I kind of wished him well and was like, you know, I'm not really the person to help you with this. And but it made me reflect a lot in the past couple of months on the similar relationships that I've been in like that, where I've dated men that were either barely average or well below average as far as size goes. It's never been an issue for me. Like, I'm not a size queen. I know a lot of women are, and it, you know, I'm not gonna lie, size is a big issue for a lot of women, and it's never really been for me. Even though I'm kind of a big curvy girl, I have a little vagina, and when I go, you know, to get an exam, I always have to request the smaller speculum, and they look at me like I'm crazy because, you know, they're not used to that. But I've had to deal with that ever since my teens. So I'm not one of these women that wants some guy with a huge 8-inch penis. It's not appealing to me. It's kind of scary. But the issue for me with a lot of these men that I dated wasn't their size. It was either that there was no connection with them, or they were assholes. So what I've found is that, you know, there is a correlation between guys and, you know, their endowment and narcissism. And, you know, statistically speaking, more men are narcissists than women. But I've kind of, I guess, created a new type of narcissism, sexual narcissism. They're not full-blown narcissists. They're not malignant. They're not bad people. They're not bad guys. But they resort to certain levels of narcissism because of their conditioning and what they've had to deal with their whole life. And so there's usually two types of these guys. There's type A, which are the super nice guys. They're really, really nice, like overly nice, and they'll do anything in the world for you. They, you know, they're the doormats. You know, they just aim to please. They have really no identity of their own, and they start to get annoying after a while because there's nothing that you can connect with. You can't really respect them because they don't really have a mind of their own. They just go along with whatever the woman wants because they're so desperate to have somebody that they want to keep her happy. And those are what I consider, I guess, covert narcissist. They're not mean, they're not malignant, they're not bad guys, they're not abusive in any way. They just tend to, you know, guilt you into feeling sorry for them, into staying with them. You know, they're aware of their shortcomings, and they, you know, they try to make up for it by just being extra nice, buying you gifts, you know, just being a yes man. And then there's the other type, type B, and those guys are the overt narcissist. They are more aggressive, you know, typically. They care a lot about their outward appearance, you know, spend a lot of time at the gym, having the ripped body, the big monster truck with the testicles hanging behind them. They're all about that image of masculinity and how strong they are, and you know, that's the face that they show to the world. But when they get into relationships, they are, and they're not bad guys either. They're not malignant, they're not violent, they're not bad. It's you know, that typical, you know, hurt people. They've been hurt their whole life. They've been abandoned by women that, you know, didn't treat them so nice, especially their first sexual encounter was bad or awkward, or if he was unfortunate enough to get a woman that laughed or you know, said something negative or shitty, you know, that conditions a man. And so then he goes into his next relationship with those same fears of abandonment and rejection, and so they start to think, why bother? Why bother getting too close? Why bother caring about this person? They're just going to dump me for a guy with a bigger dick, so why bother? And so I've dated a few of those as well. And the covert narcissist, I mean, with the two that I dated, they were really nice guys. The relationship didn't end because of their size. The relationship ended because they were boring. I had absolutely nothing in common with them. They were both atheists, and I was a spiritual person. Just no common interest at all. Nothing. You know, one was just like a science nerd, and we really didn't have anything to talk about. And then the other one was a jazz musician, and literally every CD out of hundreds that he had was a jazz CD. And you know, I said, dude, you know, you got to get some Marilyn Manson, you got to get some L.L.C, you got to get something else different, because this is boring. And he was actually probably one of the most secure in his size, and he was actually because of his size, we couldn't even have intercourse. It never happened. It couldn't happen. And we were about 4 dates into the relationship, and we were having dinner, and I asked him, you know, what's your biggest insecurity? And he brushed it off, and he said, I don't really have any, you know, I'm a pretty secure guy. And then later that night, we were at his place, and we were fooling around, and, you know, when I got to that point where I was about to unzip his pants, he says, hold on a second. And he kind of like stopped me, and he says, remember when you asked me what it was that I was insecure about? He says, well, that's it. And me being, you know, mid-20s and not really thinking about my words and choosing them before I said them, I just said, it's okay, sweetie, it's no big deal. And he laughed and he says, yeah, you're right, it's no big deal. And so he was able to laugh about it, and I was able to laugh about it, and we actually dated for about 2 months after that, and we fooled around, we did things, you know, but it didn't end because of what, you know, his size was. It ended because we had nothing in common. He was an atheist, and all he was about was jazz music, so, you know, I lost interest there. In fact, I've never seen that as a deal breaker, size. For me, the deal breakers were always a lack of respect, a lack of trust, lack of connection, a lack of communication, a lack of intimacy. So those were the deal breakers for me in almost all of my relationships, never their size. For the overt narcissists, the ones that were assholes, size wasn't an issue with them either. Their issue was that they were assholes, and they pushed me away as soon as we got too close. I remember one guy literally, as I was unzipping his pants, said, that's all there is, take it or leave it. And so of course that made the sex really awkward, right? Because, you know, how do you just relax and have sex with someone after they make a comment like that? Because you know that they're awkward and they're not comfortable. So of course, after the awkward sex, that's when he goes into the devaluing narcissist phase. And at this point I was like 23 or 22, had a really awesome body, but, you know, I always had thick thighs, curvy girl. And at that point he looks at me and he says, damn, your thighs are huge. And I got so pissed. I was like, fuck you, you asshole. And I left, and, you know, we didn't talk again for like 2 months, and then he contacted me again, and it was the same thing. You know, we got together, hooked up. He was sweet as can be until he got what he wanted, and, you know, he started with the insults again. So at the time, you know, I'm just thinking he's a narcissistic asshole, but it wasn't until years of experience with these type of men that I started to realize that it's not them being malicious or hateful or even really a true narcissist. They're beating you to the punch. You know, they're conditioned to expect the letdown. They're conditioned to expect you to leave them for another dude. So they're hurting you and pushing you away before you have the chance to abandon them. And yeah, so I've dealt with those type of relationships multiple times, and again, it's never been their size that was the deal breaker. It was, you know, either a lack of connection or them just being an asshole and not treating me with respect. And of course, it all comes down to something that, you know, it took me years to learn, what Mom always said, you know, not to sleep with a man too soon. You know, make him get to know you and respect you first. And when I was younger, I would say, yeah, whatever, Mom, it's a whole new generation. We don't do that. And now it's like, you know, over the past few years, I've just learned, you know, she was right. The only way to have true intimacy with someone is to take the time to get to know them. And, you know, to know that you can be rooted and secure in that relationship. And I really want to work with men with this particular issue because I feel like it's affecting so many relationships, because what men don't realize is that most men are average or below average in size. I know it doesn't seem that way because of all the pornography that y'all watch, and you think that every guy out there's got, you know, an 8-inch dick and can go for 30 minutes at a time or more. That's fantasy. That's not real, you know. And those guys are not the norm. They are, you know, small percentage. And not everybody wants that. Yeah, there are women that are size queens and they want that. But for men, you really need to start, I guess, being more discerning. If you actually truly want a real intimate relationship with a woman, you have to be more discerning with who you choose. Because a lot of these men, they go from one relationship to the next because they keep choosing women that are superficial, that make a nice, pretty arm piece, but they don't go for the real women that will bring them peace and contentment in their soul, and you know, love them for who they are, and and accept them for who they are. Excuse me. So, yeah, I mean, it's all about discernment and choosing wisely. And women need to do the same. You know, we need to demand that level of respect, because if you sleep with a guy too soon and then you never hear from him, or he starts treating you like shit afterwards, you can't really hold him accountable. You have to hold yourself accountable, because you made the choice to sleep with someone that you really didn't know. And yeah, he's an asshole for treating you the way he did, but if you'd taken some time, you would have known that. And this is not judgment, because I've been there. I've done it, you know, many times. You know, oh, he's amazing. He's a great guy. You know, I think I know him. Jump in, and then you find out otherwise. So, yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest issues in relationships is, you know, size, erectile dysfunction, performance anxiety. Because even guys that are average or above average in size, just because they got the equipment doesn't mean it always works right? So, yeah, sometimes, you know, they have issues. Like, I've dated a lot of poor guys, a lot of poor boys, and I'm usually the one that makes more money than they do. And it's never been an issue for me, but it's emasculating for them, I think. And so, because they're not rooted in their finances and they don't feel financially secure, you know, it affects, you know, their ability in bed. And yeah, so I'd love to hear anybody that has anything to add to this, you know, your story, or, you know, if you've been in similar relationships, or if you are in a current relationship that's like this, and you want more advice on how to deal with it, because I'm kind of expert level at it now. I think I'd say more of my lovers have been under-endowed than even average, and it's never been an issue for me. So, you know, when I am thinking about my ideal partner and what I want in a man, I'm not thinking about his penis size. I'm thinking about the size of his heart, and somebody that I want to grow old with, and you know, that I can constantly be stimulated with intellectually, because the body fades, You know, it may not always work the way it should. And when that happens, you better have the intellectual connection. Otherwise, you're not going to have anything. So, to me, that's more important than the sexual aspect. I mean, sex is great. It's important. You have to have a sexual connection, a desire for each other. But ultimately, you know, what I crave in a relationship is intimacy. That holding someone and being held, and knowing that that person is my rock, that I can trust them on every level, and they can trust me, and we're there for each other. It's like, you know, best friends times 1,000. So yeah, I mean, it's one reason why I always write about how important it is to be best friends with a man before becoming lovers, and having that deep level of communication and intimacy. Because if you can't have that as a friend, how can you have anything more than that? You know, like, how will it ever evolve into anything else? So, you know, if anybody wants, you know, to work with me as a coach on any of these issues, I would love to. You know, feel free to inbox me, message me, you know, let me know how I can help you. And I think I probably rambled way too long on this first Facebook Live because my nerves were bad. But, yeah, so any other questions that anybody has about other relationship issues, feel free to inbox me. I've dealt with a lot, you know. I'm 41 and been dating since I was 14, been having sex since I was 16, so I know men, I know relationships, I know energy, I know people, and yeah, it's just me. That's who I am. That's what I do. Nothing fancy, nothing special. So yeah, inbox me if you would like to ask me any more questions, or if you want to work with me. Thanks.